Good afternoon and welcome. Hope you guys enjoyed your lunch. Next up, we've got Phil Reinbold discussing a JT15 pre-buy inspection. Enjoy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for sitting in on this presentation of JT15 pre-purchase. For anybody that's sat through my 15D or my PT6 presentation before, you realize that there's a lot of commonality between the two. I decided to introduce this JT15 because although, perhaps not a lot of IAs deal with this stuff on a daily basis, more and more of these aircraft all the time are going past TBO, private operators are deciding to operate them Part 91, that type of thing. So it might be something that you encounter. One of the biggest things, I happen to be in the engine business, so yes, I enjoy doing big engine jobs. I enjoy that very much. It's rewarding and certainly keeps the lights on at my home. What I don't like is somebody purchasing an aircraft that has one of these engines installed sight unseen, or they inherit something that eats their lunch, gets somebody fired or laid off, or shuts the lights off in a flight department because the expense of whatever they signed on the bottom line for here just puts them out of business. That distresses me very much, and I've seen it happen many times. And of course, as the mechanic, there's a good chance that you'll probably get blamed for it. And of course, it's there's not much you can do about it if your owner, your operator, or whatever goes out. He's got a smoking deal on a Citation or a beach jet somewhere, and he buys the thing sight unseen, and expects you, maybe to bail him out later. The cost of some of these components is huge, and it can definitely bankrupt a flight operation if you're not prepared for it. So the intention of this is to make sure that you're ready for whatever aircraft is going to be coming into your stable, that you found the defects before anybody writes a check for the airplane. And in that way, you can up your negotiation skills and up your negotiation position with the guy that's selling you the airplane so that everybody comes out happy. And you don't inherit things that were done by the previous operator that cause you a lot of heartache and heartburn. So this is the JT15D here. This is a -4 or above configuration, and we'll just start marching through this. Please, if you have any questions at any time during this presentation, just sing out. You won't be interrupting me, and it makes things a little more lively and maybe a little more relevant if we can address them at the time. So if you have any questions, just let me know, or let the moderator know. So there it is. He has found this airplane down in South Carolina. He's got just an incredible deal, and he's going to purchase it, and you're going to end up taking care of it. And he's real anxious. He's ready to bite the bullet and write the check right now. And he wants to know what you think about it. The first thing that I want to say is if the JT15, if this aircraft, specifically the engines, are outside your comfort zone, you don't have any experience, or you're not current and working on them, find somebody that you trust to do the inspection for you. Do it yourself. Contact an engine, a PRATT facility, an FBO, or an individual that you have a good degree of trust, that they'll do a good job, that they'll uncover any discrepancies, and that they'll report them back to you and the owner before they get to the table to sign the check for this thing. Just very basically, the JT15, here's a -5 version. If you start we'll start from the left and go to the right. In the blue or the cold section area there, the first thing you see is the fan, followed on the medium to larger engines with a booster stage. And then as you progress on, you've got a centrifugal impeller. It might help you to, just a second here. Let me go back to this picture here. The first stage you see there is the fan. The next stage you see is the booster stage on the dash 4 and above. And then as you progress past the green there, you'll see the impeller. What we will be talking about in this area here is FOD and erosion, dirty compressor, that type of thing. As the compressed air comes out of the impeller there, it goes into the red area there, the combustion liner burner can. Its fuel is injected, atomized fuel with the fuel nozzles, and it impinges against the high turbine, the first turbine stage you see there. Following to the right, what you see next are the low turbines, stage 1 and stage 2 in the low turbine area, and out the exhaust. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Okay, here's some temperatures and pressures. I don't think anybody really needs to see that. Sorry. Okay, here we go. So there you go. There it is spelled out for everybody here. It's a very simple, straightforward, very durable engine. If you look to the right of the booster stage, you'll see the tower shaft there, which is splined to the main shaft there, and it drives all the accessories down there in the accessory gearbox. Pretty straightforward and amazing engine. So the first thing we want to do before we start running the engine or trying to assess the condition of it is see if the aircraft has had any kind of calibration on the instrumentation at all. In the past, we used to do a lot more jet cal. I used to do a lot of jet cal in the field and in our facility. You don't find that as much anymore, but if it has had a jet cal, find out when it was done. That is a good indication that at least the instrumentation, the readings that you're getting from the engine instrumentation is accurate. We're all terribly honest, and certainly engine and aircraft sales guys are totally honest. Nobody would try to fudge the numbers so that what you're seeing on the instruments wasn't actually what you were experiencing. But since we all trust each other, do the best you can to make sure that what you're seeing on the panel is an accurate indication of what the engine's really producing. At the very least, if you don't have access to or haven't had a jet cal, excuse me, in a good amount of time, at the very least, check that the ITT is accurate. There's the Barfield box, a TT1000 or a TT1200 available to check at the very least, the ITT system to make sure that it's accurate. And you can see here, this is a kind of depiction of the components in the ITT system. What I want to point out to you right up here at the very top with the three little loops there, that the T2 sensor is part of the T1 system. There's various other components, the T2.6, there's various other components with it. But when you're doing your initial inspection, or whoever you send to do the inspection, make sure they get a view of the condition of this sensor here with the 3 loops in it. It's in the inlet there. It does take a beating, bend the loops. It's susceptible to FOD. It's susceptible to a lot of things. It's an expensive component, $5,000 plus. So make sure it's working. Make sure that's in good condition. General look, see that it's okay. You can see where it's located on the inlet there. So I'm going to pop back here. When you get the aircraft in shop, you're going to want to assess the entire condition of the airplane. Has it been beat to tears? Is there a lot of corrosion? Does it look like it hasn't had good care, that type of thing? If the airframe looks like that, you can virtually guarantee that the engine's going to have some issues too. If the thing is pristine, you can rest a little easier that perhaps the engine has had good care also. So just a general thing. I'm going to speak about lightning strike and hard landings and that type of stuff later. If you think that the airframe is showing signs of this, then that will affect the engine. That will affect your bottom line. Either the previous owner is going to fix it before he gives it to you, or later on you're going to discover it and you're going to end up paying for damage that you did not cause. So really good time to get a general feel for the condition of the airplane. A borescope inspection, I think, and I've done this for a long time. I've done, many borescopes on JT-15s. A borescope inspection is very important. Only by doing a good inspection by somebody that knows what they're looking for can you get an accurate indication of what you're inheriting in your shop. Also, when you do the borescope, you're able to see and confirm probably what you're finding when you do the performance runs, both on the ground and in the air. So the JT-15 requires a long borescope and somebody that knows how to use it, because if you look at this gent here, he's going up the tail here to get past the low turbines, look at the combustion liner, looking at the number 4 bearing, looking at several bearing cover, looking at several other components for condition, wear, evidence of overtemp, sulfidation, all of these types of things. Very important to determine what the condition is here. Again, if you don't do this yourself, find somebody that you know and trust that can do it and that can document it in a professional manner. If they have a borescope that does a photo record, that's even better. That will help in the negotiation. It'll help you as you maintain this thing later on down the road, what condition it was in when you bought it. On the JT-15-4, in order to look at the impeller, there's a port on the top of the engine that gives you access to look at the impeller. We'll talk about that in a minute here. Very important that you remove nuts and washers and all that type of stuff from this pad. It sits right on top of the engine. If you drop something in there, there's a good likelihood you'll end up having to pull the engine to get it out. You might be lucky, but you might not too. You definitely don't need a bolt or a washer dropping in this area. So this gent, he's looked up the tail, he's looked at the impeller, and the next thing he'll do will be to look down the fan. On a lot of engines, some guys either don't feel it's worth the risk going down the pad there to look at the impeller. They just go in examining the fan, going past the booster, and looking at the impeller this way. Whatever you're comfortable with, take your time. Be careful when you're rotating things that you don't snap off or crush or get the borescope caught, and that goes for both ends. An easy thing to do. Go all the way around, look at as much as you can, because you need to document what you're seeing accurately. This whole process may take, depending on who does it for you, and if you have performance runs done and in-flight checks, may take anywhere from 1 to 2 days plus to accomplish this. Could cost you anywhere from 5 to 7,000 or more with expenses and travel and all that type of stuff, it is worth it. Even if you don't buy the airplane, that little investment will save you mega dollars over getting something that is in marginal condition or that you have to pay to fix later. So when you're talking with your owner or the operator of the aircraft or whatever, yeah, that's a lot of money, but it is definitely a sound investment, and it will save you mega dollars later. If you end up, rejecting the aircraft, it's still money well spent. When you go to do these inspections, it's always, if you look at this gent here, it's always nice to have a carpeting or rug or a nice mat to keep from marring the finish on the wing. It's more professional. It protects the guy that owns the airplane now, and it preserves the asset that you might inherit. So try to find something that won't scratch the surface. Make sure it's large enough and that it doesn't slip around. The wing is really slippery, so find something that you can use to help you out here. Okay, what are we looking for? We're looking for, here's a good example on here's the booster stage. I'm not sure what flavor this is, but here's FOD, just bigger than Dallas. Okay, so you find FOD. Keep in mind that 8 times out of 10 or more, FOD is covered by insurance. Have the guy that owns the airplane now, have his insurance pay for it, not yours. If you discover this later, after you've purchased the airplane, there's a good chance that neither insurance company will pay for it because it wasn't documented. And obviously this particular FOD just didn't happen yesterday. So, pardon me for, if you see this, make sure it's factored in as part of as a condition of sale to cover the FOD so that you're not responsible for paying for something that you did not do. And you can see by looking at this booster stage here, these blades are not bad. There's a little bit of, you can see there's a little bit of dirt, that type of thing. Might be time to ask for a compressor wash or something like that. These are not bad. They're nice and sharp on the edges. No evidence of any kind of erosion or corrosion. When we talked about, when we looked at the aircraft, did we see corrosion in the gear wells or in the wing fillets or that type of thing? Watch for corrosion. These engines are not highly susceptible to corrosion, but if they are corroded badly, there will be no manufacturer participation in helping you out with the bill. So now's a good time not only to identify any kind of FOD for damage, but also heavy corrosion on the cases or the blades, something like that. Again, another thing to factor in to the price you're willing to pay for this aircraft you're going to get. Okay, this poor little critter, this little quail or pheasant or whatever it was, did not fare well in this when it contacted the aircraft here. So obviously you're going to see something like this. There are cases, certainly with FOD and other things, where it's covered up. You're not told that this engine ingested something. Usually most people are honest. I really believe that. But a lot of times when it ingests a bird or some other little critter, it'll go through the core of the engine and it'll just leave a little feather or something like that. You'll be none the wiser. So during your inspection here, look out for FOD, look out for little bird guts or something like that to indicate that something has been through that engine, because their feathers and their various other body components or hard components like normal FOD, rocks, that type of stuff, plugs up orifices, impinges on other downstream parts, that type of stuff, making FOD a lot more expensive and a lot more critical that you identify, again, before you sign the check to purchase this. That's why we have insurance. Make sure that we use it. And of course, here's some other critters that go through not only turboprops, but jet engines like this. They're hard. They go way down inside. They make a mess. So on the Citation Beach jet, it's not uncommon for people to start the engines with the inlet covers still on. It sucks them up and chews them up big time. Usually that type of thing is caught. A lot of times you can't hide that. In the past couple of weeks, I was talking to an operator who was experiencing problems and admitted to me that they were doing some ground runs. And one of the guys that was helping him out with the rigging and that type of thing was wearing gloves. It sucked a glove right through the engine. You would never see it to look at it. We had to go borescope it to find any evidence of it. It turned out that the glove and whatever was left of it caused no problems. It didn't plug up any orifices. It didn't, cause any damage inside. It didn't have a rivet or something in there that beat up the inside of the engine as it went through. Turned out to be something completely different. But these are the type of things you need to be aware of and to watch for. Get it addressed now rather than later. As you borescope the engine hot section up the tail end, you're going to see, here's the high turbine vane. You're going to be looking for erosion, corrosion, deposits, cracks, that type of thing. This is why it's especially important that whoever you detail to go do this inspection for you knows what they're doing. Sometimes defects are not that big of a deal. Yes, there's a big crack in there. Maybe there's 3 or 4 cracks. None of them are converging where a piece is going to come out. They may or may not be a problem. Sulfidation on some of the blades may or may not be a problem. Carbon deposits or erosion, that type of thing. It's important to send somebody that knows what they're looking for and can tell you what's a tragedy and what's not a tragedy. And also help you to plan for dollars that you're going to have to spend later at hot section or overhaul or that type of thing. Kind of gives you and your operator a briefer as to maybe what kind of operating expense you may be inheriting with this particular airplane. For instance, here's a crack that a guy could see on a borescope. There's nothing converging. If you follow the crack, it doesn't appear that any piece is going to, you don't have 2 cracks in a certain area where a piece is going to depart and go through the engine. Cracking like this, a lot of times is just flat normal. It does affect the performance of the aircraft, usually because fits and clearances are affected and efficiencies are affected. But this could continue on for hundreds of hours, not be a problem at all. It's good to be aware of it, and it's good when you're planning for your hot section or your overhaul that you're aware that you have this condition. An experienced borescope guy will be able to tell you if that's a problem or not. Everybody doing okay? Any questions, please sing out if you have any specific questions or even general questions. Be happy to answer them for you.
No questions so far.
Okay, good deal, good deal. Okay, well, here is your high turbine wheel. What's important here is if you look on the end of these blades, they're nice and straight. There's no indication. If this engine was hot started, the ends of the blades would look very rough, very corn-cobbish, I guess, as those blades grow and strike the segments that go around them. So this would be the place you'd look for any kind of hot start or abuse of the engine. This would be a good time to find this. Again, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars to get this wheel rebladed. Depending on the dash number of the engine, on the larger engines, to reblade the high turbine disc could be in excess of 200 and a quarter. So very important that you don't inherit somebody else's problems, or that you make provision to negotiate that into the deal. If you look at these blades, you don't see that there's any kind of, if you look at the rivets up on top there, you can see the yellowish. That might be a little bit of sulfidation. You don't see it in the center of the blades where it would be chewing away at the coating and getting into the parent material. Again, something that you would be on the hook for later to pay for. The blades are nice and sharp on the leading edge and on the trailing edge on the sides there. So this is a fairly normal looking wheel. Looks like it's in pretty good condition. And just like I was telling you, here's an indication of a high turbine disc that has been overtemped. Now this is not going to, if you look closely right in the center of the picture there, you can see that there's high turbine blades even missing. This could be overtemp. It could be something else also, though. Some of the earlier series engines had a life-limited blade that was subject to failure. As we get later into the records research, 95% or more of these blades are already gone. But by part number, you want to make sure that you have non-life limited blades installed in your JT15. If perhaps this damage was not quite this bad, but let's say the thing was overtemped on start, you'd be able to tell, or likely be able to tell by looking at the edge of the blades to see if those blades had grown and contacted the segments that surrounded them. They leave striations there. Basically, what they do is they leave a portion of the blade to indicate that the engine was hot started and nobody told you about it. If they didn't tell you about it, this particular disc could be subject to failure just from the stresses of the overtemp. If a guy did not tell you, it would be really nice to know that perhaps the disc was overtemped during a start. Maybe the guy wasn't aware that he did it, or maybe he was aware and he just didn't want to tell you. Maybe that's why he's trying to sell the airplane. Things to be aware of up front. Here's a picture of the impeller, and this certain early impellers and medium later impellers had problems with the ears breaking off of the impeller. I'm not currently aware. There used to be a campaign to where the manufacturer would give you some assistance with this. I suspect the bulk of these are already removed at an previous overhaul or repair. But again, this is an incredibly expensive component. Be sure that you do a good records research to make sure that this bulletin has been complied with. Another advantage of sending somebody that knows what they're looking for is they could do a service bulletin review for you to let you know what bulletins have and have not been complied with, what rotating group items are near to cycling out or something that you're going to inherit when you overhaul it or hot section it the first time. So there's more than just borescoping and that type of stuff. Do a competent job of doing a real good research. You will really be glad that you spent a day or two doing this. This impeller here is another item that we examine as you from the borescope pictures, whether down from the top or in from the front. This is another component that you spend a good amount of time assessing the condition of for FOD and damage and that type of stuff. There's another picture of the problem that they've had with the impellers. This is also, I mean, this could have resulted from something going through the engine as well. More than likely, this is the pre-service bulletin impeller though. This is the type of damage you'll see. Sometimes it's not this extreme. I mean, like everything else, whether it's the fan or the booster or the impeller, you're going to see, minor nicks, that type of stuff. Be aware where you see the nicks, determine what kind of repair can be done. When you're doing your borescope, if you see a nick right at the base or in the fillet area, be aware that that may not be repairable. So again, to pass to the guy that's trying to sell you the airplane rather than you inheriting the cost for it. Oil system, a lot of operators of Citations or Beach Jets, any kind of JT-15 powered aircraft have done oil samples, oil analysis. You're going to check just like you would with anything after the runs to make sure it's not generating metal, you don't have the bearing coming apart somewhere. And if they have records of oil analysis that shows how the trends have been, has it been operated in a dirty area? Has it been operated in a big city with a lot of industrial pollution? Has it been operated in a coastal area? That type of thing. All good information for you to know. And here is, for instance, something that could be part of the aircraft records. These guys may do oil samples every, 100, 200, 400, whatever basis they do them. This would be good information for you to review to just see if you're faced with anything. Generally, it's nothing. Generally, they say looks good, lasts a long time. But as you can see here, there's some comments here. If that's in the aircraft record, that's really good information for you to know. As you're doing the airframe inspection, we talked about this previously, you're going through, looking at the bonding straps, looking at the trailing edges of the control surfaces, that type of thing. It's possible that the operator was not aware they had a lightning strike. Or if they did, maybe they're not passing that information on to you. This is the time to discover it. You can see on this bearing right here, you can see the pock marks where that lightning tracked across that roller there. This is bad news. This is expensive for you later. Insurance covers this. Insurance covers FOD many times. So again, everybody can walk away from this thing happy. Now is the time to discover if you see this type of thing. You won't see this because this bearing is deep in the engine. What will happen is this: that bearing will fail and it'll start generating metal all over the place. Then you're looking at a engine tear down, an expensive one, and depending on where all that goes and the extent of the bearing failure, this is going to cost you a good amount of change. So look over the airframe again very carefully for lightning strike, corrosion, hard landings, abuse, that type of thing. Poor general maintenance, just like we talked about. Poor maintenance will translate from the airframe to the engine. So you'll probably get a good view of what you're dealing with. In the back of the engine, there's a number 4 bearing cover. On the JT-15, common to find them leaking. It makes a mess. Sometimes you can see the leaks in the tailpipe or whatever. If it goes too far, it's an expense that you don't need, and it can be expensive if it's gone too far. Make sure that you do an excellent job of looking at the number 4 bearing area for any kind of coking, wet, physically wet areas, that type of thing. It makes sense, and it can be relatively expensive, not terribly, but it's tens of thousands of dollars to get back there and change the bearing cover and replace the other parts that you find, replace or exchange the other parts that you find back there as part of your inspection. Also contributes to less efficiency, of course, just like any hot section damage could. Less efficiency means more fuel flow, hotter temperatures, more wear on the parts, generally poor condition, accelerated wear on the engine itself. So this number 4 bearing area is a real good area to spend some time looking at. Also, there's a couple of bulletins back there that you should see that have been complied with, and that it's the new style bearing cover and retention. And there's another picture right there of that area. Another area to be very mindful of is this wire rope here, this emergency fuel shutoff. Make sure it's in good condition. Make sure it works correctly. Something that you need to make sure of while you're here. If you look at the difference between this one, this has just got a little coked up carbon-wise, but it does not have a bunch of oil and fluid and coking of the carbon coming out like the previous picture did. So just be aware that your technician needs to look at this wire rope as he's doing his inspection in the tail end. Again, a lot of these have been taken care of. Some of the early 15Ds were built with light cases, and they require an ongoing seam weld inspection. Most, if not all, engines have had this taken care of. This is not a fun inspection. It takes a while. It's difficult to do, and if you don't have regular access to a borescope, it's another expense you'd inherit. So just make sure that you've got the upgraded case on the engine. Now here's a biggie. As part of your paperwork research, go into here's Pratt Whitney Service Bulletin 7002 and 7003. On any Pratt, or on most Pratt engines, the 02 and the 03 bulletins give you the basis for your TBO and a record of the rotating group components, the turbine wheels, the blades, the rotor group, the fan, all that information is contained in one of these two bulletins. This is very important. And the reason it's important is because as you inherit this airplane and this pair of engines, you're going to want to make sure that you don't purchase something that is almost cycled out. There is no gray area. There's no extensions. There's no negotiation on cycle limitations. Generally, when an engine goes through a hot section or overhaul, parts are installed that will make it to the next major event. Again, certainly most quality shops and most operators, most other shops are honest and they'll make sure they're giving you a square deal. You will run into situations where an engine is short built. And that means that the thing's put back together with not enough cycles to make it to the next overhaul. Maybe it could make it to the next hot section. That's legit. You're going to be going into for instance, the high turbine disc. Would it be out of line for a guy to overhaul the engine and time continue the disc that would make it to hot section? No, that would be legit because you have access to that part at hot section. What you don't want to inherit is something that is going to cycle out before the next overhaul or before the next hot section. One, you probably wouldn't catch it at that hot section. And two, it's a huge expense to change out a rotating group component that is short cycled. You're not going to run into this very often, but again, one of those things you need to determine. Your aircraft records will show you what the cycle condition is and the part number and the serial number of all of your rotating group. spend some time with these two bulletins to either make sure that you have no cycle concerns or that you're aware that you're going to end up changing the high turbine disk at hot section. Again, something to be factored into the sale price of the airplane and the work scope of the upcoming hot section or overhaul. Things that help you plan so you don't have unexpected huge expense staring you in the face. This is really important to be vigilant here because the cost of these rotating group components is phenomenal. You may be able to find exchange components that'll get you through, which is fine, that's good. But if you're looking at for new components, that is extraordinary. And here's an example of what you might find in your aircraft records, showing what's actually installed in your engine, the high turbine blades, the discs 1 and 2, that type of stuff, the total cycles that are consumed on your particular airplane at that repair. Then you go back to that bulletin and see what the cycle limitation is. This particular engine has 4,800 cycles, and perhaps the cycle limitation is 10,000. Perhaps it's 5,000. I mean, these are just arbitrary numbers I'm throwing out. Make sure that you're not in a cycle crunch. Also, if you look up above here, not only with the original build records, but also with the overhaul or heavy repair or hot section, often you can find what bulletins have been incorporated in your engine already. So this is very good information for you to determine the condition of what it is you're about to inherit here. Okay, just kind of a quick run through here. Ensure that everything's been signed off correctly. Make sure hot sections, overhauls, make sure you have the parts, I mean, stuff we all know. Make sure you have documentation so you don't have to redo an inspection that should have been signed off but wasn't. We already talked about short built engines and cycles on our rotating group parts. Not as much of a factor on the JT15, but certainly it is on other PRATT engines of PT6. If PMA stuff has been installed, that's fine. Authorized shops can install PMA, cannot warrant it, and you have to sign a waiver that you know that PMA stuff has been installed, because Pratt Whitney will not stand behind any kind of PMA. Some of this PMA may even be superior, but that's not the point. If a PMA part fails and goes downstream or something, you are on your own as far as manufacturer standing behind you in terms of cost relief. No stones at PMA parts at all. I'm just saying, be aware that if you have PMA stuff installed, that you have other considerations to think about. Lack of proper preservation. This is another important deal. If the airplane's been sitting around for 6-8 months, or longer, hasn't been run, there's very likely you will have to do a lack of proper preservation inspection. And what that means is you have to access all of the fluid wetted areas. Stop and think about that for a second. That's all oil and all fluid and all fuel areas. That's a deep inspection. Even if you're not looking for something, it's likely you'll find something. So you don't need that. There's no reason to go in and do this. If you have an airplane, get with the guy that's going to sell you the airplane. Make sure they have a log. Yes, we ran this airplane every 30 days. Here's the log. We took it out to the ramp, ran both engines for, half an hour, whatever it takes. Here's our log. Make sure that that's part of the negotiation, because you will inherit this if it hasn't been done. Make sure it's believable. PBO and hot section extensions, if the aircraft happens to be on one of these programs, it's likely not transferable to you. If the guy says, I've got, I can run this thing past DBO to this hours limitation based on this program, investigate whether or not this is applicable to you. Likely that will drop dead when you take ownership. Not necessarily. any kind of power by the hour program, that may be transferable also. And that, of course, would be an enhancement to the value of the airplane and the engines. Investigate what you're dealing with there, work it into the negotiations on the airplane. If there's Pratt Whitney campaigns that will help you with parts, see if it's a good idea to accomplish them now before they expire. They can save you a lot of money. Pratt has an annual parts price increase every year. On the JT15, it's big. It's been 8% or above annually. If you have work to schedule, try to get your work done before the price increase. You can save a pile of cash. It's a worthy thing to do. Trend monitoring, if the guy has trend monitoring, similar to oil analysis, it's a good thing. You can see that the operator was a probably more quality operator. That's good information for you to have. If it has a tattletale box, you don't have to guess if it was overtemped, or if some cowboy's sticking the spurs to it. You'll be able to tell by the data information that is already saved. Another value enhancement with the airplane. Recommend to your guy. He's excited. It's a beautiful airplane. He can get it for $1.99. Recommend strongly that aircraft is not purchased. No, it's a smoking deal. Make sure that an adequate inspection is done before, because maybe it ain't so smoking, or maybe it's smoking in a direction that you don't want it to be. So I can't emphasize that high enough, because I can't tell you the number of times an operator or a new owner has inherited an airplane, didn't look at it. You guys all know, didn't do the logs, didn't do adequate research, didn't inspect it, and now he's stuck with something that'll be sitting in the hangar for 2 years. So you've done all these inspections, everything's looking great. Here's an example of a trend monitoring plot. You think you want to proceed with the airplane. On the JT15, we have what's called a 5-point run. Make sure you do a quality job. Again, the first thing we talked about was making sure our gauges are accurate, or relatively accurate. Go out and do a good 5-point run. Make sure that this thing is performing up to the standards that you need, and two, what you saw in the engine is a reflection of what you're seeing on the ground performance. This thing was pristine in the borescope. The numbers are great, fantastic. Or this thing was pristine in the borescope, but the performance ain't so hot. Why is that? Could we have a bleed leak? Could we have some other condition that we haven't seen? Have we got a door seal leaking? Something like that. Now's the time to perhaps identify that, so that, again, perhaps we can negotiate with the previous owner as far as getting this fixed before we take charge of it. Do a good 5-point run, document it. There's our aircraft. We're going to do a good run on the ground. If the performance is bad, we may want to block off the engine and see if the performance problem is a result of the engine, or is it something related to bleed leaks or something in the airframe. Now's a good time to accomplish that. Lastly, fly the airplane. Make sure you fly it. You're going to be, looking for any kind of discrepancies, any airframe or avionics or any of that type of stuff. Take this thing up to altitude. Make sure that it performs. If it doesn't, investigate why and see how much it will cost you to get it fixed. And that's it, I guess. Here's my background, if anybody's interested in that. Again, the big thing about I really like to harp on it is just make sure you know what you're buying, and that you have the ability to negotiate in the price before you sign for it. I work for Standard Aero. I cover 11 states. I'd certainly be available to help anybody that has any questions. before you did something like that. That's why they pay me. That's why they send me a check. So feel free to contact me if you have any questions. There's all my information. Or again, feel free to, or make sure that you contact somebody that you know and that you trust. We'll keep you out of problems. So one more time for any kind of questions, any kind of horror stories, and anything that that I haven't covered that you'd like to know about.
No questions.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Hope it was interesting, and enjoy the rest of the show.